The wind carried whispers through the land east of Eden, a place marked not by innocence, but by exile. Adam stood at the edge of a field, his hands hardened by endless labor. The ground resisted him, just as God had declared. In Genesis 3:17 says, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life." Beside him, Eve watched their firstborn son, Cain. There was something intense in him, a fire that never seemed to rest. Then came Abel, gentle, quiet, different. In Genesis 4:2 says, "Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil." Two brothers, two callings, one choice that would echo through eternity. Time passed, and the day came when both sons would bring an offering to the Lord. Cain gathered produce from the land, the result of his hard work. He looked at it with a sense of ownership. Abel walked among his flock and chose the firstborn, the best, without hesitation. In Genesis 4:4 says, "Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock." Two offerings rose toward heaven, one from effort, one from faith, and God responded. In Genesis 4:4-5 says, "The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor." Something shifted in Cain. Jealousy entered, and it began to grow. God spoke into Cain's anger, not to condemn, but to warn. In Genesis 4:6 says, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?" The question pierced deeper than any blade. Then came the truth. In Genesis 4:7 says, "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" But the warning followed closely behind. In Genesis 4:7 says, "But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Sin was no longer distant. It was waiting, watching, ready to consume. "Abel," Cain called one morning, "let's go out to the field." There was no suspicion in Abel, only trust. They stood alone beneath the open sky. Then in a moment of darkness, Cain gave in. In Genesis 4:8 says, "While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him." The first murder, the first bloodshed, and the ground received what it was never meant to hold. God came again, not because he didn't know, but because Cain needed to answer. In Genesis 4:9 says, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain replied with defiance, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" But truth cannot be hidden. In Genesis 4:10 says, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." The earth itself testified. Judgment followed. In Genesis 4:11 says, "Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." And more. In Genesis 4:12 says, "When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain's strength, his identity, was taken from him. Now he would wander, empty, broken. For the first time, Cain feared for his life. In Genesis 4:13 says, "My punishment is more than I can bear." But even then, God showed mercy. In Genesis 4:15 says, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." And then God placed a mark on him. In Genesis 4:15 says, "Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him." Not a mark of honor, but a mark of protection, a reminder that even in judgment, God is still merciful.